the idea you earlier created us with the wishing of a new year, obviously we are celebrating years here, or even mentioned the fact that we are on your planet, so therefore we aren't even in that cycle to begin with, even though we believe in time the way you do, or you send out certain frequencies, and you believe that there are certain new decades ahead, so therefore you're sending out a certain frequency, and we can read in terms of what you collectively are sending out to experience. It's something that you create, or so this is up to your own interpretation and creation of energy in terms of what you will have to deal with if this comes to pass the way you're setting it out. Now, obviously, you still are alignment, etc. It's not just the peoples on Earth that are setting those ideas out. It's just an aspect of it. We mentioned earlier, we will stress it again, particularly so-called private conversations and the written formulation, but now more clearly here in this particular instance, the idea, your spiritual concepts and your spiritual faculty, whatever, occultism, esoterics, the whole conglomerate, all of those ideas will likely become more popular in your current upcoming decade than previously, right? Perhaps exactly in your 60s or 90s, hopefully more updated and clearer, and perhaps more balanced, likely, but still we are just reading what you're currently going through. Lots of those things might be more popular. However, our first and foremost interpretation of what not just might refer to beings that are somewhat closer to the vessel's own program creation, those beings are even open to hearing this message, but in general something that pertains to your entire species, planetary body, is what we said earlier, the potentiality of quite some upheaval that can bring some change, some excitement, some destruction, despair, whatever you want to interpret there, but of course also a lot of new chances, right? So, for example, you're likely having a financial crash, where there put some stress on individuals that perhaps have all their money in certain assets that are now threatened, but remember, that's just what you're sending out. So if you're in a state of financial loss or fear, whatever, you can lose it tomorrow on the stock market with some stupid decisions, or on the other hand, you're playing the lottery, whatever, and you're suddenly rich despite the economy crashing if you're in another state. So we are just saying this is a general concept, doesn't mean anybody hearing this literally is affected by this in one way or the other. You can navigate any storm if you have the right frequency, right? So just as a general information, you have the potential in your nerve potential crash, likely larger than your 2008 idea, more like 1930, perhaps somewhere in between, but more likely the latter one, right? Currently, again, potentialities can shift, but currently at what you're heading at, perhaps not tomorrow, but again, we're talking about the entire decade here, not just your year, sooner, later, again, all of those ideas you're calling time are dependent on what you would consider rather frequency. It could happen at any point in time. It's just currently you're setting out of frequency and we interpret something like a decade to have a point of reference, each understand for you what we're talking about. Now, that's just the starting point. Not literally in your time frame, that's how it all starts. It's just what we're sharing, the ideas terms, the more minute ruffles. Depending where you're located, you also have the potentiality of some civil war scenarios, right? Most likely in the African continent, there's quite some, where the individual is usually present from this particular region is currently not present in our direction, but in case here's another point might be interesting, or whoever else. Particularly in the Southern African region, you might have something like you perhaps consider a race war between different sections that identify with the racial affiliations, not just what you might obviously think of those lighter and darker colorations, but even more tribal groups that you might not even deem that different, but they deem themselves at different junctures. This might happen all over the African continent. Obviously, there's also the idea of the political Islam idea, but that's likely also to be the main point of roughly affairs. Then there might be a war scenario of the northeastern region where the richest person is located, whereas engaging in battle with other groupings from perhaps more Western areas. But again, those are all just potentialities of energies we're seeing. It's not like we are seeing a movie clip from the future. We are showing you a Hollywood movie clip. You are seeing energy patterns flowing over the landscape. Or to put a better metaphor to Vasil asked us, we're not seeing your world, either past, present, or future, like a single shooting game, but more like a strategy game. In other words, we're not seeing it from a first-person perspective, we're seeing it from the outside, right? So, obviously, you're already having some upheavals in your South American continent, or you also have the potentiality of a second civil war in the United States, of a similar strength as the last one to some degree, right? Depends greatly how your country will interfere with others. Yes, we're not seeing a spillover the structure some people suggest of your entire country, where many individuals are open towards particular communication types are from this region, so they might find this particularly interesting. We have no interest in any region or Europe in particular, but we are sometimes altering ideas to the degree it seems first more interesting to the peoples that are located there. For example, you have the potentiality to get a nuclear hit depending if you get involved in World War III. More later. Likely somewhere in your northern region of your United States, perhaps more to the eastern, the western part, due to the fact that they are more of your main industry, military bases, decision-making centered in that region, or where they also are secret bases in the idea of where military equipment is stored, and nukes are likely the likeliest potentiality for hit is in that region, and of course the invasion idea of your Alaska. Yes, or Canada obviously could also be inflicted with conflict, but since there is not much military prowess there, there would likely not be much of a battleground. Overall, your country is much safer than what other countries could potentially experience depending on decisions they're taking. So if you're in Alaska, you might get a visitation from a Russian or Chinese in your near future if you're continuing your current path, not necessity. And of course, then there are your potential nuclear hit over there. We don't see a World War III in terms of being a nuclear war, so not the raw idea of you're going to nuke the entire planet, everybody's going to die. That's unlikely. More likely, secret weaponry you're fully aware of even existing will be employed, particularly by the United States, or also by another faction we are mentioning more further from that someone affiliated with a grouping that's not really currently in charge of any country or planet. Likely, if you're wanting to look for a start, as we shared earlier already, of such an upheaval, it will likely happen in Russia, not necessarily currently with the government, more than idea of something that you consider terrorism happening also in the Russian region, but unlike in Western Europe and the United States, there will likely be much more resistance to it in that particular country, which could also lead to another civil war. In the United States, it will likely there are some communist, socialist group that might fire first shots in terms of something like a civil war scenario. Also, we don't see any time frame that idea of what happens first, a nuclear civil war. If both of those things have to happen, or only one happens, or both together, etc. Just general potentialities. Now, the Russian idea being more of the influence under a Chinese country, so great independent states too will align further or not. Also, the idea of this capitalist, communist mixture economy, if this takes hold or stronger in Russia and the Chinese troops are also infiltrating, you're aware, there are still strongholds of communism in the country, not particularly what many other countries would consider such, more than the idea of conservative Stalinism, or we're using words in the vessel's mind about those concepts. We're not that familiar with your different political, economic affiliations, since we don't have any financial system that's close to any of your experiments on Earth. So we're just sharing potentialities there. Your NATO troops are putting a lot of ideas, and where the West had some interest in your contemporary politics. We're following that closely, so we'll have to read from its mind, considering your updates in terms of where troops are positioned in your Baltic states and Poland. Likely very stupid military decision, or at least one will just further provoke the Russians to their ideas. If there should be a proxy war happening, obviously the Middle East is much more likely scenario. Also, anybody located in Israel might like to locate Israel, Palestine. We're going to get into this whole quarrel you're running over there, but it has the potentiality to look like Syria should there be such a conflict, not necessarily because of the whole Muslim trouble over there, since the religious concept of your Abrahamic faith are always constantly fighting each other about who has the right interpretation. We're aware they're running the Iron Dome scenario, but it will likely prove not to be very effective should the Eastern Bloc make the decision to invade there in Syria and blow through all the way to Egypt, right? They will simply be overrun. Obviously, United States has also stronger military battalions there that are moving more further in the region, so likely that's where a lot of clashes and initial war would happen. But again, look into Russia if you want to see the starting point of all of this, since they have the greatest potentiality to have a throwback from your so-called Muslim terrorism, where they come up with their own ideas, likely again their conservative styles, communist combination, where if they align more with China, and you're aware China is also buying up large parts of Africa and also influencing larger parts of Europe, and many people in the Western world were aware and are upset about that. We'll look at it from the outside, and from our perspective, the United States has been doing this for decades, and it's just now that the Eastern Bloc is doing it again, that since the Cold War has done so, right? Now, obviously, we are sharing different aspects. Not all of those will happen at the same time. Perhaps some of them will not happen at all, depending on decisions you are making. But all of those are currently potentiality also. There's also a great potentiality of more civil war upheaval in your European continent, likely also to the degree of racial tensions, particularly once the native population, in particular in England and France, are the minority. Likely that there will be some form of civil war-like scenario, also greatly depending on the current Great Britain ideas going on, its whole idea of, well, breaking off, whatever. Again, we're not getting into details of your contemporary politics. We are seeing energy, and currently it's moving into something that's a new energy, not just the idea of distancing itself from the whole European continent, but isolating itself entirely from the entire, well, any other structure of power, economically or militarily, that could likely prove fatal for it in the future. But again, we're giving advice here to not any politicians or your friend would listen to us, but we're giving advice here to reading energy. One water. Now, obviously, there's no idea what you consider nowadays your whole concept of white nationalism, likely emerging in Western Europe, of all places, which currently many individuals on your world seem to locate further in the east. But what we are suggesting, it's likely if there's such an upheaval, likely in the west, due to, again, your racial tensions you're currently increasing. There's also likely going to be another wave of what you consider migrants for whatever reason. We're also going to get into the whole concept of why they're there, if that's planned, if there's a reason of the general compassion, or if it's economic reasons, or military reasons, etc. Doesn't matter. Likely there will be another influx, particularly when you're having a more warlike scenario yet again, your Middle Eastern region, where there's also the proxy idea between your Saudi Arabia and Iran. And yes, we're aware there's the richest tensions between these different Muslim groups, but again, we are reading energy, so we are suggesting it necessarily because this prophet 100 years ago or whatever said this, and therefore it's not about that, it's about energy. Just as your economic reasons, you're aware your capitalist, communist economy, we're also not suggesting how you should run your economy, or if there's a conflict because of your economic differences. It's energy. It's currently playing out in such a manner. In the medieval times, it could play out religiously, or with different ideologies, or with different countries, where it's just currently you have chosen to use those names and affiliations of your different concepts that are you're calling capitalism and communism, or the West, the East, etc., etc. We're not going to get into details of interpretation. It's just the idea you're setting out frequency, energy, and then it translates and interprets itself in a manner that emerges in a certain region where certain people, due to their genetics or gender socioeconomic status, etc., or even just location or religion are identified with one thing or the other, and then they're concurrently around it. And we are reading it from the outside. Now, then the general explanation. Now, you also have the potentiality of having communist dictatorship in the Western European region, particularly France is the prime candidate for that, right? Especially due to your current, this patch over there into the whole concept of economic imbalances, etc. Again, we're going to get the details here, a general concept, and then of course there's the whole concept of, Turkey. Your arrogant person currently having great potential of causing some upheaval, most likely due to its indecisiveness what continent or group they want to affiliate themselves with. The whole idea, are they Western or Eastern, Asian, European, African? The whole idea, they're quite wishy-washy to that extent, and they also would like to get involved with Russia, but we cannot see if they're going to be at war with Russia or if they're going to infiltrate certain groupings there, but all revolves around the Turkic tribes in the region, so not just their country, but more the whole groupings that identify as Turkic, a general amassment. So we're not saying a certain person that speaks a certain language, we are seeing an energy. It's just the groupings that currently identify with the label of Turkic tribes all over the Central Asian region. Likely, Turkey might see themselves possibly in a situation where they try to hold a helping hand or to engage in terms of creating a larger imperial influence, which then might involve the Russian Civil War that we currently see as somewhat of a great potentiality, where possibly some Muslim groupings might clash with communist groupings, while the latter are also somewhat nationalist affiliate, where there's some dichotomy there in your own illogical understanding, but again, we're reading a certain energy here that you currently don't even have a name for, that might clash with the other energy in this particular region, which then again, depending if those two countries, the Russia and China, ally, and many other smaller ones will join them or not, might create a new power bloc, which will push forward then, which too likely none of their neighbors would be prepared properly. So where the NATO troops again are enforcing some of their movements to the east, but we don't see any of this being nearly enough towards there to come. Or if one of those larger countries would decide to move westwards, militarily speaking, they couldn't do much from our perspective due to the one being economically too weak to supply their troops and the other one having no serious military. So only if they ally up, they would likely pose a threat to your current Western powers. So no matter if you identify with the West or the Eastern, we're just looking at a scenario of potential clashes. We're not giving financial or business or economic predictions in the sense where you should put your assets, where you should move, should you buy guns, where that's entirely up to you. We're just reading everything. Now, England is perhaps the least decent place to be in such a scenario due to their non-affiliation with anything. Currently, they could likely shoot themselves in the foot due to their unwillingness to, ally themselves with anything else more powerful. They're still acting like they are an empire. They are no longer so standing on their own. They will likely get obliterated should they engage in conflict with any of those parties. So it's likely an unpleasant scenario. The Holland, Netherlands are likely also particularly useful since they're close to the England region, so if there should be a nuclear hit there, for example, over in the channel, not saying there likely will be one, but it's at least a potentiality. There would be a large flood wave, so the whole North Sea coast was not very smart to be at in those junctures, but again, we are giving you time, we are giving you certain dates, we are speaking about an entire decade and a potentiality. All of this could also play out entirely different. It's just what we're currently reading. We could also tell you that tomorrow everybody is going to have a big awakening, everybody is going to be channeling, aliens are going to land on the White House lawn, everything's going to be fine. There are plenty of those predictions constantly in your so-called airy-fairy, whatever community, and we're suggesting any of them should stop putting their ideas out there. We could put some more positive ideas out there as well, but we consider it more important to warn you of potentialities, of likelihood of uprisings that you can prepare yourself for, because usually when you're prepared for all outcomes, yes, trust us, we're very much equipped for battle. If you make military plans, they always go wrong, or at least nothing ever goes according to plan. But you still need a plan, because if you have no plan at all, you're going to get overrun either way, right? In other words, if you position your infantry there, your air force there, your marines there, and then you get attacked from a completely different position, you can renegotiate them, you can relocate them, and you can still battle. But if you don't even put any troops there whatsoever, because you figure, well, we don't really know where they will attack, so we just wait, then you will likely get smothered and run over pretty quickly, getting down here, right? So we just provide you with certain information, where you go, what you do, what you affiliate yourself with, east, west, none of those. That's entirely up to you, but likely there's going to be no region that's going to be completely untouched by a coming war. So even unaffiliated smaller regions will likely just get overrun or occupied by larger military economic blocks due to their desire to control the regions in the country, much like in your earlier world wars, except this time likely it's going to be more destructive and more people going to die than your previous two world wars combined. Remember, you also have more people, so percentage-wise, it might be similar if you create such a scenario. Again, we don't see a nuclear war. There might be nukes, particularly from the east side to west, not so much the other way around. However, the West might likely employ other technological means that nobody at the current planet is even aware are existing currently, which might be some form of what you are asking for, disclosure of military technology at least. It is also the reason you're currently weaponizing space. Obviously, it is already weaponized, it's just now becoming more efficient. But both sides have weaponized space to some degree more than they both admit. Now, with both sides, they're speaking here of the east to the west. Of course, there are smaller, non-affiliated countries that will likely choose either side should there be such an outbreak. And yes, the political Islam idea will likely also play a role. Or they will more likely join the east and the west, but likely both factions will join both sides. So there are either some will join the east, some the west, but more the east, and likely those are joining the east are likely also going to use their current people in your European countries military as much as they can, which will likely not succeed and rather be a backthrow for them and fall on their feet, but not without creating a lot of upheaval. First and foremost, over here in the Wessex region, again, the England and France idea likely going to get even further, and perhaps also smaller country by this whole idea. The Eastern European area, however, would likely much more suffer from an earlier Russian advantage that managed to blow through as quickly as we're there, but likely again they're going to take the southern route because of most of the native troops are stationed further up north, where they will likely get cut off from supply troops pretty quickly. Again, in general, in this war, supply troop or cutting off supplies will likely be the success for either side that are trying to win the war. In other words, both sides are throwing through. We're talking about the European continent from either side to the other one. Obviously, likely on the Pacific War, particularly with the China-United States situation, the North Korea idea, but more or less it's going to be China and Russia if they ally for such a potential conflict. The other ones would be smaller, on the other hand, of course, the United States. Now, there was other, well, then of course there's the whole potentiality of your financial crash, etc. being triggered by such or happening earlier, and of course the civil war scenario might happen at the same time or earlier or later. That's suggesting here any particular fallout of events, except that likely in Russia there would be the first civil war scenario before anywhere else it crops up, simply because there would be more resistance to your current political movements in your current migration and economic disasters you're creating for yourself. And obviously the United States, for example, it seems somewhat sitting more safer over there, creating its own political friction due to their indecisiveness where they want to take the economic future in terms of your socialist capitalist experiment or whatever you want to call it such. Now, you could touch further more on your African content, but since the person that's usually more interested in the rich living there is currently in Brazil, we're aware it will have access to this idea later in the juncture of time. You can leave it for now. The whole idea, however, is in Africa likely there's going to be just as much upheaval and warlike scenarios as in the north, particularly due to the new modern colonialism from the Russian Chinese region that are secretly taken over the continent to their own means, and then there may be the conflict with the last remnants of first more Western influence, right? And then of course larger structures, the religious affiliation, which again, contrary to current popular beliefs, will likely not play the main role in the conflict. There will just be a side note. They could, however, play a large trigger point, but again, it depends greatly how the Turkic country will behave should there be any upheaval in the east. Now, there's almost a certainty that there will be some invasion in your Eastern European area, or if there is any of such a warlike scenario in your coming decade or later, it would happen first in your Eastern European area from the east, either Russia, China, whatever. It's uncertain how far it might get, however, it depends greatly on your current potentiality, and of course, you can avert all of this, but not by meditating in your mom's basement on your favorite crystal, or by just pretending everything's going to be fine, or by moving to a certain region, or by investing a certain stock, or stockpiling of machine guns in your attic, but more than that, the collective energy you're sending out, right? So in other words, deal with your own shit, or face your own shit. We're fine with both. You're finding certainly very interesting what you're creating. We're observing from the outside, and we hope we will learn your lessons in either way, shape, or form. And remember, war or peace are equally valid experiences. You're growing through both of them, no matter what you are deciding to do.